Hamle organization has been monitoring censorship of the Palestinian content for years. In the past week, Hamle detected more than 35,000 posts in Hebrew promoting fake news, incitement and hate speech.
Meta does not censor content in the Hebrew language that is associated with escalation like it does with Arabic content, because the Hebrew content sometimes is sponsored by the state or the military, while the Arabic content is non-state actors, which Meta could deem as illegal content.
Jalal says companies have different policies, but many are subjected to political pressure. Meta says this is not true. They say their policies are designed to give everyone a voice.
28,000.
Dina Azzouni is a lifestyle and travel influencer who's using her base to share news about Palestine. She says it's getting more complicated.
My friends from abroad started telling me that my stories no longer show on their feeds. They can no longer even click on my icon outside of my profile. It would just exit randomly.
I'm trying to access this website, but it's banned. Many here say that social media was one of the few venues left for Palestinians to share their stories with the world. Now, even that is becoming more difficult to do. Nida Ibrahim, Al Jazeera, the occupied West Bank.
Well, let's take you to some live pictures that we're getting in right now from southern Gaza. You're watching pictures of a hospital that we understand has very recently just been hit by an Israeli airstrike. And this is not only a hospital that's been treating the wounded, but also a hospital where people have been taking shelter. Obviously, many people were evacuated from northern Gaza. They've headed to the south. They have very limited supplies. We also know food and fuel are in short supply there. You've been watching the aftermath of that Israeli airstrike in that hospital. We've watched stretchers going past with the wounded. We'll be bringing you much more on that as it happens.
The hospital was targeted. Many people have taken refuge into the hospital compound. The entire hospital compound was targeted. One of the victims was under the surgical operation. We are still recovering people from under the rubble. We have reports that more than 500 people were killed. We lost audio from the source.
I'm afraid we're having some audio issues there. As you can imagine, things are rather difficult in the aftermath of an airstrike. As I was saying before, you've been watching the aftermath of an airstrike on a hospital, which was sheltering families in southern Gaza. We'll bring you more on that as we get it here on Al Jazeera. Well, meanwhile, let's take a brief look at some of the day's other news. Police in Belgium say they've shot dead a man who killed 2 Swedish nationals in Brussels on Monday night. It happened as Belgium hosted Sweden in a European Championship qualifier, forcing the match to be abandoned at half-time. Natasha Butler reports now from Brussels, where investigators are currently focusing on a motive for the shootings.
It was around 8 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday when Belgian police shot dead a man in Brussels, suspected of killing 2 Swedish football fans and injuring a 3rd person on Monday night. The suspect, dressed in an orange jacket, opened fire, then chased the fans into a building in the city. Reacting to the shooting, Belgium's Prime Minister said the country would not succumb to hate.
Last night, 3 people left for what was supposed to be a wonderful soccer party. 2 of them lost their lives in a brutal terrorist attack.
The killings took place less than an hour before a Belgium-Sweden football match in the city's main stadium. The game was abandoned at half-time for security reasons.
For several hours, we didn't know what to do. We stayed where we were. We feel very stressed, frightened, and want to be home.
Belgian prosecutors say the suspect was a 45-year-old Tunisian national who claimed to be a member of ISIL. They say he targeted Swedes, possibly in retaliation for a recent string of Quran burning incidents in Sweden. The shootings in Brussels come just days after a man armed with a knife killed a teacher in northern France. Some people worry that Europe could be facing a new wave of attacks. This analyst says that's unlikely, but risks remain.
I think there will be a heightened security for a period because there's a risk of imported conflict, as we know. There will be more surveillance, but I think also there will be investment in dialogue.
In the European Parliament, a minute's silence for the victims. Some EU leaders have expressed concern about security in Europe during the war between Israel and Hamas. Belgian authorities say the shootings weren't linked to the situation. Nevertheless, this latest attack is likely to fuel anxiety. Natasha Butler, Al Jazeera, Brussels.
Well, let's take you back to those live pictures that we've been getting in from southern Gaza. As you can see, people are still reeling there in the aftermath of what's believed to be an Israeli airstrike on a hospital. Now, I'm hearing that hundreds of people are believed to have been sheltering in the backyard of that hospital. We know, obviously, 1.1 million people were forced to leave northern Gaza or ordered to evacuate. A large number of them moved south. They've been taking shelter wherever they can find space. Hospitals, in UNRWA, the UN agency there, their schools, which were also hit, we know, this evening. Now, in the last few minutes, we've watched a number of shelters with wounded people going past. We know that there are children. We've been seeing them on our screens. We also know that a doctor who's just been speaking there says that he believes that this hospital was deliberately targeted. As I was saying earlier, hundreds of people sheltering there at that hospital. And obviously, we don't have any word yet on any kind of casualty toll. We'll bring that to you as and when we get it. Let's bring in our correspondent, Tariq Abu Azum. He's on the ground there for us in southern Gaza. He's in the town of Khan Yunis. Tariq, I know this is possibly very shocking for many of our viewers, but I can't imagine this is very shocking to you after what you've been experiencing over the last few nights.
Well, after just before a couple of minutes, it has been a huge bombardment took place in Al-Arab Ahli Hospital, which is called Al-Ma'madani Hospital, central the Gaza Strip. This hospital is located in the central of the Gaza Strip, which contains hundreds and thousands of Palestinians who have been injured during the Israeli ongoing strikes on the besieged enclave. Meanwhile, this hospital is crowded with civilians. Till this current moment, hundreds of wounded people and victims are reaching the hospitals. The Al-Arab Hospital is similar to the place that we are right now in, where people are gathering everywhere. So it seems that this hospital has been bombarded without any prior warning, causing severe destruction inside the hospital, which prevents the hospital from continuing and providing medical services for thousands of people there. And it's important also to mention that this place is full of residential buildings and commercial shops in the surrounding areas. A true massacre took place in that building, where till this current moment, ambulances are evacuating injured people.
Tariq, I believe that we're hearing that hundreds are now feared dead after this airstrike, given the number of people who are sheltering in the area of that hospital. I just saw a woman and a young girl in a corner of that live footage that we're getting. Can you give us a sense of the kinds of people that we're seeing take shelter in places like this at the moment?
Well, in Al-Ma'madani Hospital, in the Arab Ahli Hospital, a lot of people, thousands of people, really display the houses from the northern areas of the Gaza Strip. They move forward to central areas because they don't have any further place to hide in. They thought that this place is going to be safe shelter for them, but meanwhile, it has been targeted by the Israeli aircrafts without any prior warning. The deliberate targeting of civilians really led to a very great jump in terms of the death toll number that till this current moment, the Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza Strip is working on identifying the number of victims in order to be released after just an hour from now. So the surging number of victims and airstrikes also is unprecedented due to the Israeli ongoing strikes. As you can clearly hear right now, there is an ambulance is about to enter the hospital carrying out a lot of victims. You'll right now see it in the background. Even the southern areas of the Gaza Strip were heavily bombarded from the Israeli different kinds of artillery and aircrafts. The current situation in the Gaza Strip is really massively deteriorating. People are not really able to keep cope on the current situation as the Israeli bombardment continue without making any discrimination, without making any differentiation between civilians. They are trying to attack civilians. The majority of the victims were young children and women.
Tariq, indeed, we just saw a very young boy with a very bloodied head pass in front of the camera there. And I do want to apologize to our viewers. Some of you may find these very shocking images disturbing. This is obviously a live feed that we're getting right now from southern Gaza, so you're seeing things as we get them here on Al Jazeera. Tariq, we also have had word that an UNRWA school that was also sheltering many families was also hit. And obviously these are schools that have taken in people who've been evacuated from elsewhere. Do we know yet whether they received any kind of warning? I understand 6 people were killed there.
Well, even the school affiliated to the United Nations was bombarded without any prior warning. This facility is related to the United Nations that must be protected by the principle of the international law. Meanwhile, this school has been bombarded by an airstrike where 6 Palestinians were killed due to this attack. Now, bombardment is everywhere inside the Gaza Strip. People are rushing to be safe from the Israeli bombardment. Meanwhile, every single corner in the Gaza Strip get bombarded without any kind of a prior warning. Civilians are falling right now inside the Gaza Strip. The Palestinian Ministry of Health is trying to do its best in order to keep providing services due to the great shortage of fuel. A lot of facilities are related and affiliated to the Palestinian Ministry of Health has been bombarded by the Israeli ongoing strikes. Now, we are talking about 5 hospitals were threatened with evacuation, while its medical teams refused the Israeli orders to evacuate in order to be able to continue its services. As you can clearly right now see, the Palestinian ambulances vehicles are trying their best in order to evacuate victims. The surrounding areas of the hospitals are crowded of people. The number of victims is increasing, and the state of emergency inside the Palestinian territory of Gaza is really escalating right now.
Tariq, we are indeed watching more of the injured moving through that hospital. I am hearing now that it's believed that it wasn't just hundreds but thousands of people were sheltering at that hospital. Tariq, when we spoke last, you and I were talking about the medical supplies that are available to these hospitals. Obviously, they've been running short. You said that fuel has obviously also been running short. Do we have any sense of how long fuel might last? We can see that the lights are still on at this hospital, but how long is that potentially going to continue?
Well, there is no any further confirmation about the duration of time that the fuel will remain, but it might be run out within the coming hours due to the press release that had been stated by the Palestinian Minister of Health, warning that its storage of fuel will run out within the coming hours. It means that the situation in the Gaza Strip, the medical situation in the Gaza Strip, had reached critical level that even the medical abilities, the medical services might not be able to be provided to local Palestinians if this great crisis and the great shortage of medical supplies continues. And now the number of Palestinian victims is really incredibly is increasing. And you are talking about more than 9 hospitals are trying to do their best due to the Israeli shortage of medical supplies. They are trying to provide them with the treatment. Meanwhile, different pharmaceutical warehouses were destroyed by the Israeli bombardment. Also, a lot of medical teams workers, families were bombarded and even were killed by the Israeli ongoing strikes. So the situation now inside the Gaza Strip is massively turned into a chaotic situation where victims are falling everywhere. We are waiting, as Palestinians, we are waiting for further intervention to protect Palestinians.
Well, if you've just joined us here on Al Jazeera, you are watching, well, explosions, rockets or lights. We're not sure exactly what that is, but that is above the Gaza Strip. Those are live pictures from the Gaza Strip. As you can see, it's a very, very dark Gaza Strip. Electricity, food and fuel have been cut off. We know that in the last couple of hours, a number of civilian targets have been hit. Whether or not they were targeted, they have been hit. A hospital there, as you can see, has been hit. We believe thousands of people were sheltering in the backyard of that hospital facility. We also know that UNRWA, that's the UN Relief and Works Agency that looks after Palestinian refugees, also says that one of its schools, which was acting as a shelter, was hit and 6 people were killed. Well, it is now just after 1700 GMT, and you're watching live coverage here on Al Jazeera of the Israeli-Gaza war. Well, let's go back to our correspondent, Tariq Abu Azum. He's on the ground there for us in southern Gaza. Tariq, just reminding some of our viewers who might only be joining us here at the top of the hour, what they are seeing on their screens is the aftermath of an Israeli airstrike on a hospital in southern Gaza, and that's something that has been happening numerous times over the course of the last few days.
Well, the Israeli bombardment on the Gaza Strip continues. A new massacre had been committed in central areas of the Gaza Strip in Al-Arab Ahli Hospital, which is called Al-Madani Hospital. This hospital is located central to the Gaza Strip. According to the Palestinian Ministry of Health, right now inside the Gaza Strip, the number of death toll has been rising sharply due to the Israeli ongoing strikes. Around from 200 to 30 Palestinians have been killed due to the Israeli strikes. Those Palestinians have been killed without any prior warning. The situation in Gaza Strip is really catastrophic. Buildings are being destroyed, roads have been destroyed, civil infrastructure also destroyed. Victims are falling everywhere. There is no any safe place inside the Gaza Strip. Journalists were targeted. Hospitals also have been bombarded by the Israeli occupation forces without having any kind of a prior warning. Ambulances are rushing around the clock in order to evacuate victims in these areas. It's also important to mention that till this current moment, the evacuation process of those victims inside central the Gaza Strip in Al-Arab Ahli Hospital is still going. A very low pressure on the hospital capabilities, specifically in Al-Shifa Hospital. They are now trying to do as much as they can in order to keep providing treatment for those victims. But it's also important to mention that people were residing in the complex area inside the Al-Arab Hospital. Generally, even similar to the conditions in every single hospital inside the Gaza Strip. Al-Shifa Hospital also is crowded with people. More than 30,000 Palestinians are residing in the surrounding areas of the complex. It seems that the situation in the Gaza Strip is really getting such a huge deterioration. Without Palestinian Minister of Health is appealing to the international community to open humanitarian corridors in order to provide medical help for Palestinians, in order to be able to complete the work in providing a treatment for thousands of Palestinians who are falling from time to another.
I just want here to take a moment to apologize to our viewers. You are obviously watching a live feed from Gaza right now. There are potentially some very disturbing images on your screen that will pass from time to time. Obviously, these are shocking images. This is the aftermath of an airstrike on a hospital where it's believed thousands of people were sheltering. Tariq, you were telling me just moments ago that this is a hospital that's in a residential neighborhood, and there was absolutely no sense that this might happen? There was no warning given?
Again, please, I cannot hear you.
I'm sorry, and I appreciate that you yourself are surrounded by sirens and ambulances right now, Tariq. I was just asking about whether any warning was given about these airstrikes.
Well, there is a new bombardment took place even in Khan Yunis city where I'm standing right now. It's close to the hospital, by the way. Medical ambulances vehicles are rushing in order to evacuate victims from these targeted areas. They are just moving with very high speed in order to rescue them from being killed. Even from time to another, different injuries have been reached to the hospital here. Also, this hospital is similar to the Arab Ahli Hospital, which is full of people. Now we are talking about a lot of gatherings are standing around us right now, just following the live. They are just following the situation. They are afraid of being targeted also. This great sense of fear has been broadened to the hearts and minds of all Palestinians in different areas inside the Gaza Strip. Even hospitals are not yet protected from the Israeli ongoing bombardments. The Gaza Strip conditions are really witnessing a huge deterioration. There must be a very urgent, let's say, international intervention in order to protect Palestinians and even to provide them with humanitarian aid in order order to be able to cope with the current situation.
Tarek, just in the last few minutes, we've watched two very, very small children on our screen, one being held by an older woman and another injured, very little person move across our screen. We know that there were families who were sheltering in this area, and now we are hearing from a health spokesman in Gaza. Initial estimates suggest that between 200 and 300 people were killed in this bombing. You were also talking to us a bit earlier, Tarek, about the supplies that hospitals have at the moment to deal with this. This is a hospital that was acting not only as a hospital, but as a shelter. Now they're not only dealing with injuries of the people who were there, but also of the injured who are coming into the hospital seeking care. Can you give us a sense of what the facilities are like and what kinds of capabilities they have to deal with the sheer number of people who need help right now?
Well, the situation right now is really catastrophic. Ambulances are trying as much as possible to evacuate victims. There is an increasing number of victims falling in different areas in the Gaza Strip. We are talking about different bombardments took place in central Gaza, in Shuja'iyya now, in Khan Yunis city. Medical teams are rushing in order to evacuate them from the bombardment. Till this current moment, there are still people under the rubble of the destroyed houses and buildings. You are talking about collective punishment for Palestinians. Hundreds of massacres have been committed during the early beginning of this round of fighting between the Palestinian fighters and the Israeli occupation forces. Even though civilians are not yet protected by the principles of the international law, the current situation now is really terrifying. We are talking about hundreds and thousands of young children and women are killed by the Israeli ongoing strikes. Those children, they did not really have any guilt in terms of what's happening on the ground. They were targeted without having any prior warning to evacuate the buildings. Meanwhile, the majority of families, they have evacuated from the northern and central areas of the Gaza Strip. They moved to the southern areas. Meanwhile, in the southern areas, the level of bombardment is similar to the northern and central areas of the Gaza Strip. So clearly, there is no any safe place inside the Gaza Strip amid the ongoing Israeli attacks.
Tarek, I just want to remind our viewers who might just be joining us now that Israeli airstrikes have now killed more than 3,000 Palestinians since this conflict began. Now, 1 in 3 of them are children. That's more than 1,000 of them killed in 10 days, according to the Gaza Ministry of Health. And we know that at least 6 people have also been killed in an Israeli airstrike that hit, as we were talking about, that school run by the UN's Palestinian Refugee Agency that was also acting as a shelter. And that took place in a Gaza refugee camp. Now, the number of Israelis killed in Hamas's military operation stands at 1,400, including 302 soldiers. Just going back to that Palestinian death toll, that 3,000 number was before this attack. We are hearing that hundreds of people, 200 to 300 people, could have been killed in this bombing on this hospital. Tarek, we've been talking about people trying to evacuate, trying to find safety. Obviously, 1.1 million people were given an evacuation order from Gaza City, from northern Gaza, and they've tried, well, a large number of them have tried to head south. Can you give us a sense of what the situation is like now in the shelters? Are people finding anywhere to go, anywhere that they believe is safe?
Well, the current situation right now, as you can clearly see, there are lots of gatherings of people around us. Even in the displaced areas, they have been displaced from their houses. They went to hospitals in order to be safe, and even to the United Nations schools. Today, 6 Palestinians have been killed due to the Israeli bombardment of a United Nations affiliated school in Al-Maghazi refugee camp. This school has been targeted without prior warning, claiming the life of 6 Palestinians. Now, these kinds of violations of the Israeli violations continue against civilians inside the Gaza Strip. Schools, hospitals, medical teams, journalists, and every single class of the Palestinian community has been targeted. Well, there is no any safe place inside the Gaza Strip. This densely populated area has been largely bombarded during the early beginning of this round of fighting. People just are afraid of losing their life. They are very frustrated, tired. They are just waiting for a solution or a ceasefire in order to breathe from the Israeli ongoing strikes. The level of bombardment inside the Gaza Strip is unimaginable. It's incredible. No one can really imagine how Gazans are still tolerating the current situation. They are trying even to bear up with the current situation by using the determination, and even despite the fact that they have lost a lot of their family members, every single house inside the Gaza Strip now has a wounded person. Even sometimes they have a victim due to the Israeli ongoing strikes.
Tarek Abu Azum there for us in Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. Well, if you are just joining us here on Al Jazeera, let me tell you what you're watching. These are live pictures from a hospital in southern central Gaza, and this is the aftermath of an Israeli airstrike. We've seen families go past, a fair number of children, a large number of injured people being taken past us in strollers. We believe that hundreds of families, so potentially thousands of people, were sheltering in the backyard of that hospital after being forced to evacuate other parts of the Gaza Strip. And we are hearing from a Gaza Health Ministry spokesperson that they believe between 200 and 300 people were killed. And again, if you are watching these shocking pictures, I do apologize if you are upset by any of them. This is a live feed now that we are getting from Gaza. Well, joining me in the studio is Ibrahim Freihat. He is an associate professor in conflict resolution at the Doha Institute. Ibrahim, these are obviously hugely disturbing pictures for many, many people. Obviously, the reality on the ground for a lot of people who've been living in Gaza and living through this for the last 10 days. When you and I last spoke, only in the last hour, we talked about humanitarian law and international law. From what you've seen here, and an attack on a hospital, where do we stand in terms of international law?
Well, this question actually should be asked to the Biden administration, who is protecting all of this and providing the coverage for the Israeli bombardment of Gaza. I mean, this new massacre that the Israeli bombardment has committed now, it's not surprising. It shouldn't be surprising, because the Israeli mass bombardment of Gaza is reaching every centimeter of Gaza. There is no safe area in Gaza now, is for civilians or for children or for anyone. And this hospital that has been hit, it's actually in the central area of Gaza. It's supposed to be in the area where Israel has ordered the people to evacuate to go to. So this is not in the northern part of Gaza, where the announcement was given a few days ago for the people to go to. So it's where it's supposed to be a safe zone. It's supposed to be a safe area, and this is what's happening, and this is what the result of this. So you have more people concentrated now in this area, which raises the number of people are expected to be killed in this area. So
and they're not just concentrated in a general area, but concentrated in very specific locations, like schools, like hospitals, both of which were hit tonight. I've been wondering, in watching this unfold, we've been hearing Israel say that they are targeting Hamas locations, Hamas military locations. The Israeli army put out a statement today saying they've targeted or hit some 5,000 Hamas locations since this began. What do you make of that when we see attacks like this on a civilian residential area?
Well, this is a hospital. I mean, this is nowhere that people are sheltering in this hospital, and it's treating wounded people, injured people in this hospital. How on earth this is going to be a Hamas target, or how this is going to be a place where Hamas is operating from? Hamas is not operating from hospitals. People are sheltering in such places. And this question actually should be asked also to the Israeli army. You know, they know these places. They know where they should be, where they're bombarding and throwing these bombs. So the Israeli government should provide an explanation to this, and should be actually pursued in the International Criminal Court about these kind of bombing. We had back during the war in Sarajevo in 1995, when a bomb hit a market and 50 people were killed. Bill Clinton at the time, the U.S. administration, led an international military intervention to stop the shelling and to stop the killing. Today, Biden administration is providing the coverage, is a partner in the killing, is a partner in the bombardment, and that's providing this coverage. This shouldn't be surprising to anyone, and those who are in charge and those who are policymakers should all be held accountable for these genocides that's happening. The act of genocide that are supported by statements by the Israeli government as well, openly admitting to these kind of genocidal statements and genocidal actions. And no one is taking action is in response to this. And a Security Council resolution for a humanitarian ceasefire is being rejected and vetoed by the Biden administration.
Ibrahim, I want to come back to the Security Council and the situation there in just a moment. But I was looking at a statement today from B'Tselem, the Israeli human rights organization, and they were saying that it appeared that Israeli airstrikes were prioritizing damage rather than precision. We know from the United Nations that an UNRWA school, which was sheltering hundreds of people, was also hit. 6 people there were killed. What are the implications of hitting what is essentially a UN facility? And also, just to flag, that also took place in a refugee camp.
Yes, well, Israel does not care about any international law. Israel has always been treated as a government that acts above the law. The international law is the least of their concern. So this is how they're used to. This is how they've been supported by Western powers in order to act the way they want and the way they like, without any responsibility or any accountability in the international law. The impunity that Israel has been given, right, enables Israel is to act as such and, to do this kind of mass killing and mass bombardment of Gaza without caring about precision or anything, because the goal is to inflict as much damage as they can in order to impose certain conditions and commit a new Nakba, for the Palestinians to be able to push them all outside Gaza. I think there is a political reasons behind this, because we have heard this been happening over the past days, is trying to push the Palestinians for a new displacement, is to go outside Gaza. And these are all signs of this new Nakba that Israel is committing now, and the Western world is protecting it and not even raising a condemnation of this kind of act and genocide that Israel is committing in Gaza.
Ibrahim Freihat there, and